Hello again to all the gods of English. Blue team, all sitting down in their comfy chairs and sofas, waiting for today's lesson to begin. And here we are. I'm here, and so is everyone else. We've got the cameraman, the sound man, the director's assistant, the camera technician, and the makeup artist. We're ready. Are you all ready? Are you? Good. In that case, what are we waiting for? Let's start today's lesson. Okay, well, how much do you remember from yesterday's lesson? Do you remember the main difference between must and have to? You do? Well, that's great. Have another biscuit with your coffee. Okay, but just to make sure, let's check the main difference together. Now, although have to and must are really the same, we normally use must when the sense of obligation, the feeling that we need to do something, comes from within, from inside us. I must remember to buy milk on the way home today. I must pass my exam. I must learn to drive. With have to, the idea is slightly different. Now the sense of obligation, the feeling that we need to do something, comes from outside, from the law, for example. You have to wear a seatbelt when you're in a car. When you leave the country, you have to take your passport or an identification card. When a ticket inspector asks to see your ticket or season ticket, you have to show it to them. Good. That's clear, isn't it? Okay. Now, something else we have to look at is what happens to must in the past. You see, must has no past form. Isn't that easy? Well, yes and no. We can only use must in the present, so that's simple enough. When we want to use must in the past, we have to use the past version of have to. Now, who can remember the simple past form of the verb to have? That's right. In the past, have changes to had. Now, in this situation, we do exactly the same. Have to becomes had to. So, when we talk about obligation in the past, we use had to. For example, last night at 2 a.m. I was very hungry. I had to get out of bed and eat something. Did you hear that? I used had to because the obligation was in the past. I can't say, last night I was very hungry. I musted get out of bed and eat something. That sentence is gibberish. Must doesn't have a past form. So we use the past form of have to, and the past form of have to is had to. This morning, the bus didn't come, so I had to walk to work. Okay, now let's have a look at some example sentences and decide if they're correct or incorrect. It's very late. I must go home now. It's very late. I have to go home now. Normally, Alfredo doesn't work at the weekend. But last week, there was an emergency at the bank and everyone must work last Saturday and Sunday. I must get up early tomorrow. I've got lots of work to do. I have to get up early tomorrow. I've got lots of work to do. I woke up late this morning. I must run to catch the train. Okay, so what do we think? Are you ready to check the sentences? Of course you are. We're always ready, aren't we? Okay, so what about numbers 1 and 2? Are those sentences okay? Is it correct to use must? Yes, it's not aggressive. I'm talking about something that I have to do. So using must isn't a problem. I'm talking about an obligation. I have to go now. I must go now. In these sentences, they have exactly the same meaning. You can use whichever one you prefer. There's no difference. Have to equals must. So, if you want to say, I must go, then that's fine. Or, if you prefer to say, I have to go, that's also fine. The two sentences mean exactly the same. Okay, great. On we go to sentence 3. Now, what do you think about this one? Is it correct, or is there something wrong here? Well, I think you can all see the problem, can't you? That's right. The sentence is about the past, which means what? That's right. As we know, we can't use must in the past. Must hasn't got a past form. We have to use what? That's right. For obligation in the past, we use had to. So the correct sentence is, normally, Alfredo doesn't work at the weekend. But last week, there was an emergency at the bank and everyone had to work last Saturday and Sunday. Good. So, if we're talking about an obligation in the past, then we're talking about something we had to do. I had to get up at 6:45 to finish my work. I had to run to catch the bus this morning. I had to get to the office before my boss yesterday. Now, what about numbers 4 and 5? What do you think about those two? Well, they're the same as the first two, aren't they? Yes, they're both correct. We're talking about an obligation that we have to do. We're talking about ourselves. So there's no aggression involved. We can't be aggressive with ourselves. So we can use must. No problem. Or, if we prefer, we can use have to. It means exactly the same. There's absolutely no difference. Great, fantastic, fab, and onwards to glory we go. So, now comes the last one. What do you think, you gods of English? Is number 6 correct or incorrect? Yes, you hit the nail on the head. It's incorrect. We can't use must with that sentence. And why? That's right again. The sentence is in the past. That means we can't use must because must has no past form. When we want to use must in the past, when we want to talk about an obligation in the past, what do we have to use? Bingo! That's a hat trick. Well done. When we want to talk about an obligation in the past, we use had to. So, the correct sentence is this. I woke up late this morning. I had to run to catch the bus. Brilliant. Well done, everyone. And now, because we're on a roll, I reckon it's time for us to take the next step. Who can guess what the next step is? It's easy. It's not hard. What do you reckon is coming next? That's right, a doodly-doodly-doo. It's time to look at the negative version. It's time to look at what happens when we add that old favorite not to the idea of obligation. Are you ready? Of course you're ready. So, let's get stuck in. Now, when we introduce the negative idea, when we add the word not, then things change a bit. When we add not to the idea of have to, and then when we add not to the idea of must, we get two different results. With must plus not, the idea is logical and simple. Mustn't is the idea of obligation, just like must, but mustn't is the obligation not to do something. Must is the obligation to do something, and logically, when we add not, we get the obligation not to do something. So, if I say, I've got an important meeting, I mustn't be late. We all understand that it's necessary for me not to be late. To be late is the wrong thing to do. My obligation is not to be late. I mustn't forget to phone my dad means that I must remember to phone my dad. I mustn't forget means that to forget is the wrong idea. It would be bad to forget to phone my dad. If you go to a museum, the security guard says to you, you mustn't touch the statues, you mustn't touch the paintings. You can take photos, but you mustn't use the camera's flash. So here the security guard is telling us what is okay to do and what is not okay to do. He's telling us about what we can do and what we can't do, what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. Okay, OJ, that's all fine and groovy and logical as well. But when we add not to have to, things go a bit weird. When we add not to have to, we don't get a synonym for mustn't. We get something else. Have to means that there is an obligation. We know this. Fine. But when we add not to have to, we use the verb to do. We use do not have to, or the short version, because we all prefer the short version, don't have to. We don't say have not to. We use the verb to do, add not, and then finish with have to. Okay, this means that when we add not to have to, we need to use the verb to do. When we use the verb to do, what do we have to be careful about? That's right. When we use the verb to do, we have to remember to change the verb form for the third person singular. Do you remember the verb to do? Mabel, Mabel, always willing, always able. Help us all now, please, with a table. Okay, that's the positive form. And what about the negative form? Mabel, can you help us again? Are you ready with another one of your tables? So, this means that sentences using not and have to have this form. I don't have to go yet. I can stay a little bit longer. You don't have to get up early tomorrow. The meeting starts at 11 o'clock. He doesn't have to go to work tomorrow. He's on holiday. We don't have to wait for a bus. I'll drive. You don't have to pay to park here. It's free. They don't have to start work early, but they have to work until 10 p.m. Now, one thing we need to pay attention to is the difference in meaning between mustn't and doesn't have to. Can you feel the difference? Mustn't is the direct opposite of must. Mustn't means that it's wrong to do it. You mustn't drink and drive, for example. It's not allowed. It's wrong. You mustn't do it. With don't have to or doesn't have to, it's different. With do not have to, we're saying it's up to you. There's no obligation, but if you want to do it, okay, it's your choice. So when we use mustn't, then it is necessary not to do something. But when we use don't have to or doesn't have to, then it's not necessary. You can do it if you want, but if you don't want to, then that's okay too. And oh, crikey, we're out of time. Oh, there's no time for Enid today. I hope she won't be angry with me. I must remember to send her some flowers as an apology. Okay, people, that's all we have time for today. We have to finish the lesson. Thanks for watching, and remember, you can always catch up with all of our lessons at www.m5tv.hu. I'm Gav Duncan, and I must go. I have to leave now, but I'll see you tomorrow. See you later. Bye.